My name is Dan Wesley. I'm North American CTO for Planning and Analytics at Workday. And more importantly, today I'm joined by Bharath Srinivas from the Associate Director at Accenture, Tom Riley, CFO at Seattle Sounders, Kate Bassett, Director of Outbound Product Management Planning at Workday. And I will say someone needs to ask Tom the question about the scarf. We're so excited to have this conversation with you today to discuss how business leaders are harnessing the power of trusted data to make agile decisions and identify opportunities of growth. We're in a new tomorrow, a new day today, and we've got to be able to be agile as companies and to make better predictions. So our esteemed colleagues with us today are going to talk about their experiences, and I like to start with a very specific question. The pandemic has caused significant disruption, requiring businesses to quickly respond and confidently plan for what's next. Have you leveraged the power of data to navigate change, drive ability, and growth? And from a subject perspective, I like to start with Tom. What do you think? Have you seen some changes in the last few months?
Thanks, Dan. That I think March 12th of last year was the day that all of my life changed, where I came to work or didn't come to work, I guess is the better way of putting it. And since then, it's been an attempt to figure out what the future would look like. And I very, very quickly realized that that was a fool's errand, that there was so many possible futures. And to be frank, without a platform that allowed us to define scenarios and play them out in many different forms, we wouldn't have been able to make it through. And we're a relatively small business. So, we lost 90% of our revenue in 2020. Lost about 50% this year. And we just had to figure out very quickly, with all the different things that were going on, whether we were playing games, whether we were playing games in front of a half full stadium, whether there was going to be a season at all, what was going to be necessary to get through it. And, I think 10 years ago, I think I would have gone crazy because it would have been just almost an Excel nightmare of some kind. But really, with the platforms that are available today, with the Workday Adaptive platform, we were able to sort of just keep stringing on multiple scenarios and provide information to our business owners, our financing partners, the league, on what that future looked like. So I wouldn't say it drove growth for us, it drove survival for us. And it was we had to be incredibly agile. We had health directives coming off the state of Washington or our local county or the league that changed whether we could have 4,000 people in the building or 30,000. And every week we had to adapt to that and sort of update what the world would look like. So I'll stop there. And then the World Cups, this scarf is our specific World Cup scarf. The Sounders are known for our rave green. This is a blue because we are the lead on attempting to get the World Cup here in Seattle in 2026. And expect a positive result in March regarding that information. And that's what this scarf is about.
Campaign continues in our discussion today. Bharath, from an Accenture perspective, what's been your experience in changes over the last few years?
Dan, thank you so much for the question. And Tom, you brought some real world examples of what the last maybe 12 to 18 months have been for businesses. If I want to start from building on some of the points that you mentioned, the prime concern for CFOs is to protect the financial viability of their organization. I think as we think about what that means, and as we think about how we enable the CFOs of the organization in doing their prime objective and in performing the key duty that they have in the organization, data becomes a critical piece. And one of the key things that we've seen is CFOs that embrace the cloud architecture that is built for purpose for not only scale, but also the agility through which they can start to then think about ways of modeling different scenarios. They can start to think about ways of bringing all of their data in one place that will give them the visibility into the future. And it'll also give them the ability to start modeling some of those scenarios in a very agile manner. In a recent CFO research that we did at Accenture, we found that about 43% of the CFOs are the only ones that are focusing on advanced financial planning and modeling. Less than half of that are doing it in cloud. So we know that there is a key pain point as it relates to the CFOs and what they need in order to perform their prime objective. So embracing the cloud, bringing that data in one place, and using technologies like adaptive planning and then the Workday platform at large allows for them to plan and analyze all in one place. And I think that's one of the key things that we've seen. Over the last year, many of our clients took that jump, took that leap with us in implementing adaptive, bringing in Prism, thinking about their financial processes and how they can orchestrate all of the changes that is happening in the real world and in the business world by using one platform to solve for all of the key needs.
Bharath, great comments. You know, Kate, I'm going to turn the ball over to you. You're the builder. You're building on our customer expectations and driving, you know, our future here for the Workday Adaptive Planning Engines. Tell us as to how you are reacting to what we've seen in the last 2 years and how are you steering our product?
I'm making a lot of the similar observations that Tom and Bharath have previously shared, but as a planning technologist rather than as a practitioner, I've been so fortunate to be able to speak with so many planning experts who are navigating and weathering this storm and leading that for their businesses. I've definitely been able to observe some of these trends coming out of the pandemic as these businesses move into more of a transitional state. So there's undoubtedly an increased criticality in bringing together the executives across the C-suite to do these planning activities together as a whole business. And so along with the C-suite and these line of business leaders, they're coming together to give each other clear visibility into one another's operations as part of this transition stage. So one of the most critical of these relationships that we've seen really emerge and continue to strengthen is the one between the Office of the CFO, who's ultimately leading the charge of all planning activities for the financial health and well-being of the business, and also the Office of the CHRO, who is ultimately looking out for the well-being and the safety of their company and employees. So this tightened planning collaboration between these two parties has had companies coming to us and our planning technologies for that centralized solution. It's no longer an option for them to have one vertical using, a product like Anaplan, or one vertical using Essbase and another line of business using Excel and doing these things in disparate systems. They simply can't operate like this anymore. So if they're not planning together, they're not going to weather this storm. So our solution, it ultimately aims to foster that strategic partnership between the Office of Finance, HR, and the line of business leaders. And that's really been my big observation coming out of the last couple of years.
You know, in the conversations I've had with CIOs and CTOs over the last 2 years post-COVID, everyone is talking about agility and change. And now that planning needs to be a team sport. It can't be a once-a-year activity or held behind, the walls of the CFO. Everybody plans, and the only way to be agile is to be looking at these new mathematical futures and then react on it quickly. If we think of the impact of what's happened over the last 2 years, we look at the workforce who is most adversely affected by everything that we saw. And I'd like to know from the group as to how you've seen workforces change, and have we delved into analytics and delved into more optics as to the change in not only your day-to-day activity, but where you're looking at future activities with your employees. So let's start with Kate. What have you seen from a build perspective in the conversations you're having around our product?
So observationally, a lot of our customers who are using our technologies are fortunately coming out of the worst of the pandemic, and positive and brighter future lies ahead of them. But they're in this state of transition. So they're returning to work after furloughing employees or asking them to work from home. And in many cases, for some of them, they're now resuming hiring plans that had previously been paused last year, which is really encouraging to hear. But that comes with its own set of challenges, right? So that that plan, execute, analyze life cycle that you heard Bharath mention earlier has been really critical for them to be able to monitor the success of this transition real time, effectively, and in a closed loop fashion. So that incredibly iterative and responsive technology is critical to how they're behaving and how they're actually having to do that that planning cycle. So that's one component. And then you throw in the great resign of 2021. So not only are they having to monitor how they're performing against their workforce plan coming out of this transition stage, but now they're doing it on top of this existing workforce that is just reshaping every single day. So that closed loop plan, execute, analyze went from a, wouldn't it be great for business if we did this, to this is the only way we're going to stay on top of our hiring plans and our talent plans and our skills plans based off of the constant seismic shifts that this great resign is bringing to businesses every single day.
Well said. Bharath, what are you seeing?
I'll build on what Kate just said, and I think if we put ourselves in the seats of the HR leaders across the world, the way that their day to day has been for many years has completely shifted. A lot of what the HR clients that we see are concerned about and are talking about is not only understanding what is the talent that is within the walls of the enterprise, but also then empowering both individuals, the people leaders, managers in harnessing that talent. I think one of the key aspects of all of this is skill. Skill allows for all of them in the enterprise to then think about a common language. So it goes back to the title of this is data as it relates to an individual skill, and a skill as it relates to the way that the changing world is impacting the business itself, and how that can then be contrasted against what is defined as a workforce plan. Workforce plan used to be this once a year exercise that was done by a handful of key leaders at the top and then rolled down to the enterprise. I think what we've seen more and more is cascading that decision making down to individual people leaders, and also creating some new opportunities for individuals that are looking to increase the value that they provide to the enterprise, improve upon their skills, and then use those skills in order to advance their own careers. I think all of that happening in the canvas of a system like Workday has been the change maker. As we think about a lot of our clients that have embraced Workday and embraced all of the goodness that comes out of it, workforce plan has gone from this big activity that would happen with a small group to small, simple activities that can then be used for different scenarios. An example that I can think of is higher ed education institutions who would plan once a year to think about what does their semester look like, what does the faculty shaping look like. And now in a virtual and a hybrid world, you may not need as many of those kind of in-person kind of classes. How do you then plan for the courses? How do you parallelize some of those kind of processes to think about having your faculty across both virtual and also in-person kind of classes? So those are some examples that I can think of how workforce planning has basically transformed in itself and has created some new and unique opportunities for people who are looking to improve their skills, expand their skills, develop their own career, and shape to where they want to be in their own individual milestones of the careers as well.
Great information, especially higher ed. That the change that's happened to those organizations and managing talent has just been enormous and huge impact on the student and faculty population. Tom, what are you seeing out on the field?
Well, I do think there was a real practical benefit to the work planning, which was we were playing with various leave scenarios. We had multiple business objectives. I'll just list two of them. One, we wanted to be humane with our workforce that was going through this trauma in their own lives. You know, many of our employees only made, 30 to 40,000 a year. We're living in an apartment somewhere by themselves. So we were trying to figure out benefit plans that would help them in those moments, but also a lot of those people, their job was effectively gone. When you can't sell tickets to go to a game, what are you asking them to come and do every day? So we were balancing our business needs of like, where are we going to go with these people that are really valued resource that we want to grow in the long term. So we took a fairly I'll say uneconomic approach, because we also knew at the other end of this, we would need all these people. And I think we're very grateful we did, because as we know, the labor market's very constrained, and finding good people's hard. So a lot of the time our workforce is fairly, I'll call it inefficient. They're not horribly busy, but then we do something like the playoff run we're on, where we throw a parade for 200,000 people in downtown Seattle, and we need everybody. So, it was a real balance between the economic short-term decisions that we were trying to reach to save money with benefit plans and things, keeping our workforce intact, and then making sure that when that day came that we would have to turn the business back on, there was someone to turn it back on, because there was going to be a day when 40,000 people were going to show up at a stadium, and we actually have to put a game on and have like things happening there. You can't just not have employees at that point. I will say, moving out of this has been a clarifying moment for inefficiencies. There was every part of our business sort of figured out how to do things. First of all, I don't think we all thought we could do all what we did remotely. And now, we figured it out. Every part of our business figured it out. And we have actually gotten rid of our corporate office. And we are making a decision about a new, space size. Like Bharath was talking about, where do you move into the future? We're still hanging on to see what shakes out in terms of the resources and what our workforce really wants. And so that's not everybody's struggling with that, to figure out what the future should look like in the new office. And I think I'll stop there. It ties into a lot of what others have said, that, having this platform, though, that we could easily play with multiple leaves of types of leaves of government programs and stuff to build in to see what was going on. I'm not sure how we would have done it. I mean, I guess we would have done it. We just would have been more difficult and way more inaccurate.
Accuracy, and measurement, to see, are you on course, are you off course? And do you even know you're off course? And I think foundational to that, to everything that we talked about today, is data. You've got to have good, trustworthy, clean and data that allows you to make those decisions. There was a report recently from the Harvard Business Review about analytics services that found data management tools are the top technology investment that organizations are looking at today. What investments do you think are most importantly in this new changing world that we're living in? We'll start with Bharath with this one.
Dan, I'll build on the key point that you just mentioned. I think as much of investment we have seen in the world of analytics, there is still more room. And I think when I think about the analytics in specific, it is not just about analytics, which again might be in one of those kind of fancier applications, which is looking at all the real-time data and coming up with new metrics. But it is analytics and in the hands of the people that are making the decisions and at the time when they're making those decisions. And I think that's a key part of the investment, which is a very near term, probably already something that is needed for today's businesses. As we think beyond that, what that allows to do and what the power of data in people's hands allows to do is organizations build up an inherent trust. And trust will then help with, going back to one of the points you mentioned, cleaner, commonly understood data points that is across the enterprise. Those kind of behaviors will then automatically lead to machine learning and usage of AI, so that we can then start to see some of the anomalistic behaviors that were happening and try to take some of those out of the system, de-risking for the Office of the Finance, and again, highlighting and amplifying some of the key things for the Office of the CHRO. Both those will go hand in hand, but where it starts is data and analytics as a near-term investment.
Tom, what do you think?
Well, just to build on one thing that I think is was kind of disappointing is 2 years ago, I think we were all on the verge of using sort of this error detection, anomaly detection stuff and make it practically useful for the first time. Like I could actually see a world in which I would go into, adaptive and be able to look 5 years out at multiple departments and see where the weird thing happened that I could then go figure out. And then COVID hit, and now, all there is anomalous data, right? So
Right.
I think we have to wait a year or two now to actually use some of this functionality that was kind of right on the cusp of being really useful as far as I was concerned. I will say, I'll go back to what Bharath said, that I've been in this game a long time and put my CFO hat on. I've been pitched a lot of data stuff, a lot of things that people say. And I always come down to that, okay, you're sitting there and what is decision you're going to make and how are you going to make it better? And how much is it worth for you to have that decision? How much is it really worth for you to know? And often you still see organizations where they can't really answer. They know they kind of got to do this big data thing, but hey, for us, I can get my arms around it because we've been thinking about it for a while. The biggest example that I'll give you is our most complex problem is ticket pricing. It's a really fun problem. It's really definable. There's lots of good resources out there. So I'm real comfortable going down that path because I know what the value is of us being able to price 5% better is. And I know that there's real stuff out there. There's a lot of other stuff where I'm still like, you got to prove it to me that you're going to help me make a better decision.
Well said, and hitting us in our pocketbooks, which is important. We were thoughtful about that ticket price. Kate, comments. What are you seeing from a product management perspective and the customers that you talk with?
I think a few things that both of my my counterparts here have said have really resonated and hit home with a lot of the observations that I've made over the last 6 to 9 months or so. So utilizing planning technologies that can harness both your internal data, whether it's your people data, your salary data, or your financials data, as well as external data is really the differentiator here. And that's really the cutting edge of where companies are looking to invest to take that next step in the maturity curve. So there's so much disruption happening, whether it's geoclimate or political climate or supply chain disruption that we're seeing here in the US, public health data, vaccination rates, case rates, all of that. These external influences have major impact to every business and every line within each business. So this data, whether it's our own or whether it's happening outside of our four walls of our business, is really our currency against which we can plan and make smart and wiser decisions. So whether it's looking at your employee data, such as your turnover and salaries that are related to this great resign, or the critical skills that you simply must retain to stay competitive, and then sentiment via data and survey tools coming directly from your workforce, that's really critical data currency that you can use. But you have to fundamentally plan based on what your business will look like, because we don't work or live in a bubble. So we can't be blind to the world that's happening around us. So whether that's bringing in public health data from the outside, bringing in interest rates from the outside, and whatever that may be, finding a technology that lets you plan and intelligently simulate across these situations using that both internal and external data, that's really truly planning for this ever-changing world that we live in.
It is definitely the agile world that we live in, an elastic world, the ability to ask as many questions as you need to ask to your front office, your back office, and it doesn't stop. It continues. It's a rinse, lather, and repeat often. And from my conversations with the CIOs and the CTOs, it has moved them closer to the business. They're as close to the business as they've ever been. They want to ensure that conduit of data, that data currency, is accurate and trustworthy. And then from a horsepower perspective, that they have the compute power to ask the n number of questions that they need to ask, and ensure that the engines can supply the outcomes from that. And it's a new world for all of us, and it's an agile world. And let's close with a takeaway from each of you as to what you'd like to share with the audience today as we're looking at this, this new normal of analytics. And we're going to start with Tom. We'll put you back on camera.
I think that the thing that I think about most is what makes sense to bring in-house and what makes sense to keep out of house in terms of expertise. I will tell you, we have two sides of our business. We have our soccer side, our technical side, and then we have our business side. On the soccer side, we've made very strategic decisions to bring in people that are almost PhD level statisticians, mathematicians, people that are technically very adept at sort of data analysis. On the business side, we've brought in very smart people, but they don't have that intellectual rigor, but they're more users and they know how to relate to third parties where we're relying on them. And so the question I'm always asking is, what do you do yourselves and what do you do at whatever size business you are? Do you go outside? I don't know if that's a insight, except the big question that I keep asking myself.
I think when you have to continue to ask yourself as well, because there's no set answer here. Kate, how about you?
One key takeaway, maybe for companies out there who are nervous to get started, or the idea of company-wide planning seems like the wild, wild west, or big data sounds like Big Brother is watching you. I think Tom is really onto something, in that finding out where the expertise and ownership lies within your business is key to doing company-wide planning well. So starting within a small vertical of your business and bringing in experts from those different areas of expertise, whether it's HR, finance, and dotted lining into to do this exercise well for a small portion of your business is a great place to start and really get a sense of where do the ownerships of HR versus finance versus, an analyst within the business really lie, and what do those handoffs look like for you based off of your culture and your skill sets? That's what I would recommend as a place to start for those who are daunted by this task of big data and planning and analytics.
Bharath?
Dan, fundamentally, when we think about data, there are two aspects that I would say is very critical. One is data can be informational. And I think this is one of the key places where the role of both finance and HR is to break down those silos and ensure that the information that is in the system can be trusted. A headcount report that was run by the head of the division for marketing is still the same data that would show up in when the same headcount report is run by someone within finance or someone else. So having all of those kind of data points and information that is across the enterprise come into one place so that everyone can speak the same common language is a key part. That inherently builds trust. And with trust, you can then start to then think about taking that information in the data and turning them into insights and actions. And when I think about insights and actions, it's not the macro level things of all of the metrics that you need to measure by, but what are simple, meaningful areas of measurement that we can give information and insights to our people, the people leads, so that they can make their own decisions and they can actually build their teams and build a sustainable team as they grow their part of the business as well. So I think those are two aspects of data, which is very critical in capturing the information in all of the same places so that everyone's talking the same language and converting them into actions that is democratized across the enterprise.
Well said. And, I think I would just add to the conversation, look at your engines. Is your technology built for it? Can you scale? Can you scale at the velocity that you need to? Can you trust the data in one place? Can you break the individual silos that are usually sitting within most organizations? Look at the engines, modernize your engines to be able to keep up with this new ever-changing world. And I think you'll see some advantages, as the outcome from that. I just want to thank everyone today for participating and sharing your insights, some really, really great content. I learned a lot. I want to thank you for your time today. And again, join us in our next episode of Workday Chats. And thank you again for your time today.